Hello and welcome to the ISG Imagine Your Future podcast series. I'm Barry Matthews, I'm a partner at ISG, and I'm fascinated by technology. I've been working in technology consulting and leading technology consulting businesses for the past 20 years or so. In this podcast series, I discuss how technology is transforming business, and I get to interview some fascinating experts in technology. From leading CIO and CTOs to experts in emerging technologies or visionaries designing the future of work. I get to ask my guests the questions that interest me, and I ask them a little about themselves. That way we get to learn about some of the people who are pioneering technology's disruptive influence on business as we know it. From AI to blockchain through cyber and into sourcing and operating models. It's a lot of fun, and hopefully it's educational, inspirational, and entertaining. Thanks for tuning in. I hope you enjoy it. Hello and welcome to another edition of the Imagine Your Future podcast, the podcast where we look at the different ways that technology is transforming business. Now, in recent episodes, we've been discussing how the world of work is being transformed and how COVID-19 is turbocharging that transformation. Where we work, the return to the office environment, how we work, the rise of the gig or freelance economy have all been hot topics of late. But what's equally hot is the role that automation technologies are and will continue to play in the new economy. Automation technology, and particularly robotic process automation, or RPA, has the potential to rapidly automate vast amounts of knowledge work. Processes that previously required people are now being automated by RPA in its various forms. Now, this isn't anything new, of course. It's a technology that's been around for the past decade. But it's becoming more widely known now, and the major RPA software brands, the Blue Prisms, the Automation Anywheres, and the UiPaths are now very well known and very highly valued. But many industry commentators say that RPA hasn't yet delivered on its potential. It hasn't expanded as rapidly as it could, and companies that have invested in the software have struggled to expand beyond a small number of bots in many cases. Now, to help us to understand a little bit more about whether this is accurate, and if so, why, I'm joined by two industry experts. So I'm joined by Chip Wagner, who's Chief Executive Officer of ISG Automation. He was also previously CEO of Allsbridge and was my boss. Both of those companies, technology consulting organizations, and experts in strategy, business case, operating model, and implementation of automation solutions. And also John Mone, who is co-founder and chief exec of Neuralify, who are experts in RPA enablement, and who is now part of ISG Automation following the acquisition of Neuralify by ISG a couple of weeks ago, which is very exciting news. So, gentlemen, welcome to the podcast. I've done a fairly poor job of basic introduction, so let me ask you to introduce yourselves to our listeners. So, John, maybe you could go first.
Sure. Great to be here, Barry. Thanks for the invite. I'm John Mone, yes, and co-founded Neuralify. My background really is in the software space related to automation, simulation systems and such, and that was, in many respects, the impetus, that experience for jumping into the intelligent automation and RPA industry.
Excellent. Thank you very much, and a very warm welcome. And Chip.
Yeah, hey, Barry, thanks, and hello, everyone. Delighted to be here. I've spent a lot longer than I care to admit, but about a decade or so in professional services in the IT space, another decade in the wireless software and services business, and then a decade now in the advisory and consulting space with Allsbridge, and then with ISG Automation and ISG. We started the RPA business back in the Allsbridge days. We've been at it for about 5 years, so delighted to talk about it today and looking forward to our podcast. Thanks, Barry.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, and congratulations on the acquisition. It's very exciting news. John, why don't we start by you telling us a little bit about the history of Neuralify? What was the thinking behind the establishment of the company? When did you set it up, and was there a specific gap that you saw in the market that you were trying to fill?
Sure. Yeah. Well, we started the business in earnest in early 2017. And the focus was probably a well-worn business model out there, create a professional service function, and then in performing that service, find gaps in the market for which we can build specific technology solutions. And getting into the RPA space was very, very clear to see. And from that point forward, we have devoted our organization to the challenge of enablement. And enablement really is just sort of the catch-all term for finding ways, either through solutions or software, to help an organization who's making an investment in RPA, help them realize and maximize the return on that investment. And considering the relative newness in the world of technology of RPA, and the amazing growth in the industry, there are always going to be gaps in that or any fast-moving market. And we built out some technologies that were really geared towards de-bottlenecking, if you will, the types of things, the stall points that would prevent an organization from truly scaling. And that's what we focused on, and that's how we ended up establishing ourselves in this space.
Excellent. So yeah, relatively new then, starting in 2017, and we're sitting here in July 2020. So obviously done very well in a very rapid time frame. What's been the secret to the success? Is it right place, right time? You focused on specific industries? Has it been type of clients? What's been the secret of the success to date?
Well, in a lot of respects, timing is everything. Being in the right place in the right time. I think there's always an element of luck. And then really, what we set out to do is we hired some really excellent people who had experience in this space that formed the nucleus of this business. Many, if not all of them, stayed with us all the way through. So they had certainly bought into and were believers in the vision. And then true, especially in a fast-growing space, you end up seeing the vendors really participating in what turns out to be an arms race in making a better product and feature. And that is and always shall be their principal focus, is to create a better product, a better RPA product. But as an industry matures, there's a need then for the ecosystem around it to fill in where those gaps are. Education, some of the things we've done with code quality analysis, all the types of things you might expect to see in a maturing operational space. Those are areas where we were able to occupy. So I think it's a combination of fortuitous timing, getting the right people around the table, picking an area that may not be the sexiest thing out there, but that we can focus on very, very specifically. And then, again, introducing a little bit of tenacity and perseverance along with a nice helping of luck. And there you have it. That's usually a nice recipe for something to be successful.
Yes. Yeah, no, absolutely. And Chip, let's talk about ISG Automation, which has also developed relatively rapidly, as you said, over the last five years or so. What type of work are ISG doing in the automation space now?
Well, Barry, when we started 5 years ago, it was very new to people as to how to take advantage of this disruptive technology. What would it mean? And, what was the art of the possible? What could possibly be a strategy for me? What impact could it make on my business? So we started, as you might guess, in a more advisory sense, helping people with strategies and assessments, which led to proposals that suggested there was very significant savings. And as a result, people said, hey, help me get this savings. We had to help them acquire the appropriate technology, so we used value-added reseller agreements with a lot of the providers to be able to fulfill that. And then it became a question of building bots. And as we build bots and think about organizational structures to sustain that, we get into the development of centers of excellence for internal capability. So there's a training element that comes along with that. We build bots at scale. We help with the organizational change management inherent in a different way of working. And then sort of last but not least, we help people with the concept of actually caring and feeding for the bot farms that have been created. IT can do that, or others can do it, but it really is you have to take care of these digital workers. They don't just work forever on their own, so they do need a certain amount of support, production support, and maintenance activities, and we offer those services through the capabilities in our Bangalore center, which makes it compelling economically and time zone friendly to us as well. So kind of a cradle to grave set of operations around not just RPA, but really an entire sphere of intelligent automation technologies.
Brilliant, thank you. And what was the strategy behind the acquisition? What's the gap that Neuralify was filling for ISG?
As we think about trying to be kind of the alternative to the big four and the alternative to the big monolithic ITO and BPO providers, we're looking to either enhance our geographic reach, enhance a certain technology, bring a capability to the table that perhaps we don't have, or give us some more scale. And John and his team really added a couple of really important things. The digital enablement platform that he referred to is truly unique and a total differentiator. No one else has that capability, and we were drawn heavily to that. We recognize that at the moment it's automation anywhere centric, and it's a true differentiator for them as well. It's our intentions to think about how we can extend that to the other software publishers and make that something that we in ISG Automation can offer to our clients uniquely, so that maybe when there's sort of a differentiation needed, that gets thrown into the mix, and it puts us in a position to be the chosen partner for our clients.
Yeah. So the digital enablement platform, or the digital learning platform, I know that's one of the products, John, and there's others as well. I know there's a code quality analyzer as well. Can you just tell us a little bit more about those two?
Sure, and maybe the backdrop a little bit is around this enablement story. One of the linchpins in this space is, well, maybe the dirty little secret in this space is that it's not as easy to do this as perhaps the industry might have you believe. But it's not impossible to take on and be able to build automations with RPA. So we really set out to kind of close that gap. And what this industry has also done, which has been, I would say, a bit magical, is that it's sort of cracked the code of putting into the hands of business users these so-called low-code development technologies, technologies that were formerly and traditionally only in the hands of IT. So suddenly the universe of potential users and the beneficiaries of something like RPA and these low-code apps became orders of magnitude larger. But the methods of teaching and educating these people didn't grow along with that. What we find today still is the education mechanisms are still extraordinarily functional in nature, very pedantic sort of dot-by-dot movement through some learning, things that work quite well in the IT universe, but a different sort of approach was required for the so-called business user. So we took an approach with the first of our two major products, the digital learning platform, to move away from functional learning that taught you about what the tool was, moving to more applied and continuous learning, teaching you very specifically how to use this technology very well. And we did some novel inclusions, and that include a lab that allows you to build automations in a controlled environment, and that environment will grade you and provide you feedback in real time without any human intervention, so that, again, as an organization looks to create a rich supply of capable practitioners in this space, they have now a mechanism by which they can scale it. The traditional means of on-premises training, which today is at least on hold with COVID, now having a mechanism to be able to really deploy that globally any hour of the day and give people the education that they need, versus the relatively unscalable and expensive and logistically challenging on-premises alternative. And then the second head of the dragon, if you will, in terms of where we've been making most impact in the market, is the other area of bottlenecking. Organizations invariably are going to want and need to put some governance and controls around their automation program. And the more bots that get published, the more bots that need to be policed and reviewed for adherence to their own standards, security reviews, and things of that sort. To date, that's been extraordinarily manual, and in being manual, it's tedious, it's error prone, and it consumes an awful lot of time of relatively high-paid resources. So we built out an automated platform that empowers a company to, well, for one, use the best practices that we've inserted into it, but then also build rules around their own standards, around risk and security considerations, and thereby extracting a substantial amount of the time and energy that gets put into an automation review to be able to accelerate that process. And so those are two such areas, among a couple of other ancillary products that we have around a games arena. We use the gaming platform for a couple of reasons. One is to create internal competitions to generate esprit de corps, and also, too, for even demand and awareness generation inside of an organization. Invariably, if we're successful in helping our clients become successful, they will look to expand this into other business units. And the gaming platform is a nice way to demystify what this automation thing is all about, get even at the executive level some proverbial dirt beneath their fingernails, and usually what we see is that ignites the art of the possible internally, and we take it from there.
Interesting, is it? The vision of RPA is that it's this relatively simple technology you put in the hands of business users, and they can automate processes. But the reality, it seems, is so much more complex, which I'm sure is why organizations have struggled to get beyond a certain scale. And it seems like you've realized or highlighted that there are two areas that prevent organizations from scaling, which is the training and education piece, and then the policing of the standards, as you say. So let me ask you a couple of questions on both. So on the training side of things, is the training that you offer sort of customizable per client? Is it specific to the processes that each client has? So how is that done, and how is it different from, let's say, the training that Automation Anywhere would provide themselves? And do the organizations get accredited in a specific training course? And then just tell me a little bit about the gamification again, because that sounds fascinating.
Sure. We set out to build, and as Chip had alluded to, we set out, even though we have an affiliation with a particular provider, we set out to create a very agnostic platform. So, in fact, while we had geared it towards one path, the reality is that we can pivot and will pivot very quickly in a horizontal nature across the other vendors. It also serves even beyond RPA as we see more and more low-code tools entering this space. We're well positioned and well equipped to being able to provide experiential learning in that regard. And that's the differentiating point, I think, for us, is that we really focus on learning by doing. That's a key driving point for us. What I'm fond of saying is the only way that you learn how to ride a bicycle, for example, is by riding a bicycle, and that's really what we focus on. We present the learning from a practitioner's perspective. So while we don't have people who are classically trainers per se, or unilaterally trainers, we have experts, people who've actually worked with live ammo in the field. They know how these tools work and don't work, and they can teach you accordingly. We find that very important. But yes, we've also, in building it to be agnostic and building it to be flexible, we have and do create customized learning experiences in that. We have, and there are very foundational things that you must learn as essential ingredients to being a capable automator. But we can go any number of directions into very, very advanced topics using simulation systems that we have that emulate real-world environments so that we can train you on what life will be like when you're developing an end-to-end automation, including all of the things that represent production environments, i.e. Our systems purposefully and programmatically misbehave in ways that you will see in your real experiences, because really building resilience into your automations is a very important part of this. So in that regard, we've built this out to be quite flexible. We've built out custom education related to specific internal applications that organizations might use. For example, before investing and moving into the supply chain business unit, there is potentially a particular application that organization uses. We can front that investment by building some customized learning as to how to interact with that particular application, so that when people take the training and they graduate from the training and they are accredited on our training, then they're really taking a running start into being effective when they get to actually building production automations.
Excellent. No, it's great that it's sort of extendable into not just different RPA software, as you said, extending it to UiPath or Blue Prism, but also into other technologies as well as you go into other areas of AI or cognitive or what have you. And then I think the other thing that you've hit upon is the whole policing and standards. Because again, in my experience with global organizations, one of the benefits but also challenges with RPA is quite easy and relatively low cost to get started, and so organizations have pockets of RPA across their operations in different countries and in different functions, and automating different processes in different ways. And key to being able to scale is trying to get some consistency, some global consistency, and get some control back. And it sounds like the sort of code quality analyzer is enabling that for organizations too. Is that the case?
That is the case, and if you think about sort of the learning application, a learning platform, as looking to match the supply with the demand that might be internal to an organization, and at the cross section of those things, when you start producing bots by capable bot builders, i.e., the supply, matching up against the demand of the business, then at that intersection is the desire and need for quality. Lest you spend an inordinate amount of time getting those initial bots right. The whole idea is to accelerate that path, reduce the overall cost to build, reduce the overall cost to maintain, because if you can do these things and build these bots to a standard and do that consistently, then you can really scale. And I think we'll probably talk about this at some point, but that's exactly where in the conversations that Chip and I have had, we talk about the 1 + 1 = 3, snapping these capabilities into the world-class capabilities that ISG Automation already have. This really gives us a unique value proposition to the market for true end-to-end capabilities that'll help an organization scale and I think change the game.
Yeah. No, absolutely. I can totally see why it's a good fit. So, Chip, let me ask you. We've talked about training and policing being sort of challenges that global organizations have had. In your experience, have you seen organizations really struggle to get beyond a certain number of bots and not live up to the promise of scale that maybe the software vendors sold them? And are there other reasons for that aside from lack of training and education and sort of policing and governance?
Yes, Barry, actually we have. I mean, scaling this has been one of the biggest challenges that is out there. And it's a heavily hyped technology. I think we would all agree the RPA players did hype it pretty thoroughly during its early years, and it's been taken up greatly. Citizen development models that suggest in this low-code, relatively easy to program bot world, this should be easy to scale. The reason we were so drawn to Neuralify is that this whole notion of enablement and learning on a scaled basis for people to enable them to meet the promise of RPA, we thought was really a strong feature in the Neuralify offering set. And when we think about sort of the 3, 4, 5 reasons why people fail in scaling, I mean, certainly the inability to have a lack of appropriately experienced and trained RPA resources is right in the middle of the mix. We put that together with, weak organizational change management, because it's just not the same when bots are doing work that humans used to do. We have to have the organization embrace that and adopt to the different way of working. We still see people that lack a comprehensive strategy and a roadmap for how to bring this into a company. So that's a really important sort of building block feature. If you don't have that, and I guess maybe last but not least is just the whole idea of being able to identify appropriate use cases out in the enterprise. Sometimes the RPA COE sits inside of IT and business users, some can be reticent to pull them in to take a look at their business and offer the ideas of where we can find appropriate use cases. That's been a problem in some enterprises. And I guess I would be remiss were I not to mention that obviously IT security and compliance and all of those kinds of issues are very important. They can't be forgotten, and that can be a challenge if that's not given the appropriate amount of time. So IT is a partner in this, even if the business community will grab the citizen developer model and run with it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. All really good points. And it's interesting how the industry has matured. As I said at the beginning, it's been around sort of 10 years or so, but organizations have had to learn over that time. And I think now organizations are going into RPA in a bigger way with their eyes open as to how to avoid some of these challenges. John, have you got some sort of, you must have some examples of where, you've gone into organizations that were struggling, and as a result of using the tools which we've talked about, they've really been able to expand and scale up quickly. Can you just bring that to life for us?
Sure. Yeah, and one of the things we're particularly proud of is quite a number of Automation Anywhere's flagship accounts have opted to use the Enablement platform to achieve their goals, which compared to the alternatives is a testament to what the team has built. But on the learning platform, and I had hearkened to this a little bit earlier, aside from the fact that the learning by doing model just simply works alongside the ability to provide some degree of support beyond their journey, on that journey to learning. It's not something where you just take 3 or 5 days of training and suddenly become an expert. So having that guide along the way is quite helpful. But really, very specifically, one global organization had a real challenge because at the time, the only solution they had, and they had quite substantial scale ambitions, but the only solution they had was to put 10 people in a classroom for a week at a time. And that was never going to get them to the hundreds, if not thousands of people they wanted to enable on this platform. So fortuitously, that was around the time that we went to market with the platform, and it solved a number of problems. Again, aside from producing the desired outcome, which is the ultimate evaluation, it solved a lot of the challenges around the inputs too. The logistical challenge of scheduling people, taking them out of work for a week with the opportunity cost that comes with that, flying people around, paying for travel and meals and such, really just from that perspective pulled a pretty substantial thorn out of their paw. And then lastly, with a platform like this, they were able to gain sight where they were otherwise blind. And by that, I mean, you send somebody to an on-premise class, like we all have done many times before, and you never really know what you get out of it. You check the box, somebody does it, and off you go. And with a platform like ours, we're able to provide insight into things like engagement and performance so that company managers could see what return specifically they were getting on their investment. And we could also see, do people require additional help or intervention along the way. So again, all of those things came together in respect that in terms of the value drivers for the learning platform, those are pretty key ones. And for the code quality tool, really, examples of where and how there is value here. As that so-called governance and control tool, it's allowed, again, another global organization who had otherwise tapped the brakes on their program because they didn't feel they had the controls. The code quality tool allowed that to happen because then the COE was able to have confidence that they would be able to process at a standard with consistency and uniformity all the automations that were being published and put into production. And to that as well, again, that would be the outcome, putting quality into the production environment so that you can then scale with confidence and not end up pushing your problem into a different space. Right. And the things that really drove them were reducing the number of raw human review hours that were present, reducing the uninvited phone call at 3 a.m. when something broke in production, being able to find those errors well upstream. In effect, having an automated FTE there ready to do reviews on call, and then other sort of let's just call it professional quality of life pieces. The general reduction of that frustration tax of having to do the tedious work of a code review, and in general serving as a risk insurance policy. to know that every single line of code that gets put into production is going to be reviewed with the 50 or so rules that a typical organization might end up having with that degree of consistency. So those are two examples of those two flagship products. And then on the games piece, if I could just add, with Automation Anywhere at some of their larger conferences when we used to get together for such things, they utilized the games platform for competitions. And again, it was just to create some energy. And we've had hundreds of people in the rooms competing to see who was the top bot builder in the space. And again, it brings some fun and excitement and awareness to the overall space that's been quite beneficial.
Oh, cool. I mean, well, certainly the first two examples were really industrializing things, right? As the industry's matured, digitizing it through your platforms. But as you quite rightly said, then creating this data which enables organizations to have confidence that their people are being trained, and you can measure who's doing what. And of course, it can be done virtually, but also then, as you said, the quality of the code. And I love the idea of the gamification, the sort of hackathon style things that we're seeing all over the place now, but putting the energy and the enthusiasm and the fun, quite frankly, back into it as well. So, great examples. And of course, the lockdown will have, in a way, has proven the point that you don't need to physically go to places to get things done, and you can still train your people virtually through platforms like the ones you've described. Chip, let me ask you, what about the COVID-19 pandemic generally and a more broader impact on the industry? Is it going to lead to more focus on digitization generally and automation, or have we seen there be a temporary halt in projects? What's been the impact so far?
Well, I certainly think that in the early weeks and maybe even the first month or two of us all coming to grips with the coronavirus, there was a degree of paralysis in the overall business system, and some decisions and some automation efforts and projects and so forth came to a screeching halt. But I think as we've now sort of settled into trying to come to grips with what this is, how long it's really going to be around, and how profound the change will be on the other side of this, I think we all believe it. We're very bullish about how automation can help going forward in changing the way we work and in lessening the burdens that such a virus, were it to recur, might bring to us. I'm thankful that the Forresters of the world, the Gartners, the HFSs and so forth, who are writing about such things, are certainly predicting a strong demand for automation on the backside of this virus. Certainly we agree with that. It's trite to say it perhaps, but the bots, they don't get the virus.
Yeah, absolutely. So what's next for ISG Automation then? It sounds like we see we're optimistic about the future. We're going to see increased demands and rosy times ahead. Have we got more acquisitions planned? Are you going to be expanding the types of work we do and the services that ISG provide? What's the plan for the next 12 months?
Well, as we've thought about this business over the years, we had always envisioned it being like building a skyscraper, so to speak, and the foundation and the first couple stories of the building were all about RPA and getting it ingrained into the enterprises around the world, getting people comfortable with it, getting those that low-hanging fruit, and then beginning to look, as we build more stories onto the building, beginning to look at the next set of ancillary technologies that are in that whole disruptive digital bag, so to speak, and we're talking there about intelligent character recognition, optical character recognition, and as we go into the call center world, so we move into the middle office and even into the front office of the enterprise, we get into natural language processing, natural language generation, machine learning, heading up into the cognitive capabilities. So we actually see a very robust skyscraper, so to speak, with lots and lots of stories. And we're really in the early days of building this skyscraper. So we envision continuing to expand our services to address those kinds of additional disruptive technologies. And as we round out our own firm, we would really like very much to be sort of the go-to for those that perhaps don't want to have a large ITO or BPO provider, or may have, a desire to not work with the Big Four. We want to be the alternative to the Big Four and the alternative to the BPO and ITO players. And it's our intention to make ourselves more powerful in different geographies where perhaps we may have a lesser presence, to fortify our capabilities across the different products that are out there, and certainly to look at certain verticals that we aren't as strong in. We may fortify through acquisition to strengthen ourselves in a given vertical. So that's what I hope you'll see as you look at ISG Automation in the rearview mirror in 2 or 3 years, is you'll find that we represent that vision.
Excellent. Yeah, well, there's so much opportunity and growth in this space. And as we said at the beginning, as much as RPA is relatively straightforward, it's actually really complex to do it at scale, as we've discussed, and for all of the reasons that we've discussed. So I see such huge growth potential for us in this market, as of course the providers move on from RPA into more cognitive technologies and into the platforms that they are all developing, because of course it doesn't stand still. Interesting to see UiPath's new valuation that I saw a week or so ago. They got their next round of funding. I think they got another 250 million or so, and I think it valued their company at around 10 billion or so. It got a lot of attention in the market. What were you guys' thoughts about that? Is that realistic? Is that overhyped? What do you think? And let me go to you first, John.
Well, to them, I say right on. I mean, that's the market. The market has spoken. Is that a decacorn now? Is that the first European decacorn? But I mean, I just think that if you distill it down, it is not only a testament to their success, but also foreshadowing for the impact, almost the relative de minimis level of impact that intelligent automation has had on this space, and sort of pricing in the future in that regard. And the RPA providers, as the first ones in, they're not going to solve all the problems, but they certainly have quite a bit of desktop real estate, for which other types of capabilities can be inserted in or bundled with as well. So I think it's really exciting to see this. Rumors of RPA's death are premature, or whatever the actual quote is that I tried to bastardize there. But anyway, from that perspective, I think it's enormously interesting and positive.
Yeah, absolutely. What about you, Chip? What's your perspective?
Well, I think you can only marvel and applaud the industry at large for the positive optimism as you look forward. It's a breathtaking valuation. By all counts, it's sort of 25 times revenue, which is pretty heady. So congrats to UiPath, and really for and Automation Anywhere and others, right? WorkFusion and Blue Prism, to all of them, congratulations. I would point out on the horizon to these small little entities called Microsoft and IBM, who seem to be paying attention. Microsoft's made an acquisition. IBM's made a little acquisition recently. So they've gotten the attention of some other players, and there's certainly other enterprise software players out there that you might think could have some attention. So I would imagine if we look backwards in 3 years, this will be a different landscape. There'll be some new disruptive players that have arisen out of the different additional disruptive technologies that we mentioned, machine learning and OCR and so forth, natural language generation. And there'll probably be some consolidation. There's probably going to be a company that's gone public or two. So stay tuned. The ride is going to be fast and furious over the next 2 to 4 years.
Yeah, absolutely. God, I remember UiPath back probably 2012, 13, when they were a tiny organization out of Eastern Europe, and meeting Daniel and being very impressed. And it's been incredible to see the rise. Guy Kirkwood's done a fantastic job as their chief evangelist. They've done a very, very good job democratizing RPA. So I wish them all the best. It's great, fantastic to see. So good. Let me change tact a little bit. I ask all of my guests 5 standard questions. So let me ask you both those same 5 questions. So the first question is, which technology has had the biggest influence on your career to date, and why? Let me start with you, Chip. Is there a technology that's had a really a big influence on your career so far?
I think if I answer that, I have to be the mobile phone, which has now become basically a supercomputer in your hand. And you think back to the early days of working. At least for me, I can remember my very first mobile phone, this will date me terribly, but it was in a bag, right? And it was heavy, and it got hot as it worked for a while. But if you think about what that has enabled work to happen anywhere, anytime, in any forum, and the ability to reach out from a compute power point of view in your hand to get any answer you need in seconds, it has completely changed the environment. I mean, I laugh at what my children, as they go into the work world, are dealing with now, and how much more power and capability they have than what I had when I started into the work world. And I can only imagine what it's going to be like 20 years from now.
Yeah, God, I can't even imagine. I can remember working without a mobile phone just about. And I remember I had a pager on my belt. And you think how much things have changed in whatever it's been for me, 25 years. Just incredible. Yeah, no, absolutely. It's probably had an enormous influence on all of our careers, actually. Great answer. John, same question to you.
Yeah, this is a challenging one, because at any point in my life and career, I would have had probably a different answer. But I think in aggregate, for myself, it would be the C programming language, because I was currently at the time sort of doing a random walk of life with my college degree in physiology, not really knowing what I'm doing until I found programming, and the rest really was history and continues to be history. So that was probably the biggest influence for me from a technical perspective.
Absolutely. I learned a bit of C myself back in the day as well. Great. Second question. Which technology has, in your experience, or if there is one indeed, promised the most but delivered the least? There's been lots of technology, I think, that's been a bit of a damp squib. You get really excited by it and then it fails to deliver. Is there anything that sort of springs to mind when I ask that question? Let me ask you first, John, this time.
When you first present that question, I'm still desirous of the jetpacks that never arrived. But more pragmatically is, I would say, renewable energy. I have been waiting for solar to be ubiquitous in a way that I never have to pay another electricity bill. But those days elude me. Maybe Solar City and Tesla will finally get those panels to work. It will be truly off the grid. But from that perspective, that's what immediately comes to mind in terms of the amazing promise and delivered the least. But notwithstanding, there's probably some human related reasons for that as well. But
yeah, I wonder whether that's just a question of time and whether it will come. Who knows? But no, good answer. Chip, same question for you.
Well, I think of the expression "no fine wine before its time" when I think about this sometimes, because some technologies that have come along have just been early and they've taken a while. In fact, the very RPA we're talking about has been around for 15 years. It's not, but now it's found it's now a fine wine in its time. And I think there are a lot of examples of technologies that maybe are, they're just not quite ready for prime time. Blockchain comes to mind. I mean, blockchain holds enormous potential. And I think it's early days. There's a couple of, nice glimmering hopes for good success, but it certainly hasn't taken the world by storm. When first written about several years ago, you were sure the world was going to turn upside down. Everything would be on a blockchain, and business and life as we knew it would be completely different. We haven't quite gotten there, but we may still get there.
Yeah, no, you're right. It's just a question of time, and it does take longer than we think it's going to take when we first hear about these technologies. So again, time will tell. Third question. I'm a bit of a gadget freak, so I have drawers, in fact, rooms full of gadgets that I buy with air wheels and watches and various things. Not quite a jetpack, but I probably would have bought one if I'd seen one. And then oftentimes I spend lots of money on them, and then they just gather dust and don't really add much value to my life, but I like having them. Is there a gadget that you guys use every day that sort of changed your life or you couldn't really manage without? Let me ask you this question first, Chip.
Well, I've got to go back to that mobile phone. I certainly cannot imagine the world without a mobile phone. You could think about a tablet computer or a laptop kind of in the same vein. I'm not quite the gadget freak that you are, but Barry, I've known you for years, and I know you have played with some fun gadgets. But those are just amazing in terms of what they've done to change the way we live, the way we work, the way we study, the way we get information. I mean, it's impossible to imagine being without them.
Yep, no, quite agree. John, same question for you.
Yeah, I also, Barry, have drawers full of the early attempts at a handheld device that brought the world to my fingertips, and all of them failed. So the mobile phone most certainly is certainly the daily tech gadget that is most close to my heart and my pocket and my wallet. On the fun side, I would say, though, and this certainly isn't an everyday, but from a true gadget perspective and technology, as somebody who has really no musical talent, but one day fancies themselves as being a electronic music DJ, I turn to my my little touchpad that I have, a little controller where I can pretend for a moment in time that I am somebody in that space, and I'll never be anybody, but for that moment in time, I'm pretty good.
My penultimate question, let me ask John, you this question first. Which technology do you believe will have the most disruptive influence on business over the next decade?
Well, this whole machine learning ecosystem is surely going to be driving the bus, and Chip had mentioned before natural language processing, and even just recently OpenAI released their so-called GPT-3 natural language generator based on a unfathomable amount of inputs and 200-fold larger than the latest innovation, which itself was world-changing a year ago. I would encourage you to go look at this. It is just shocking. So I do think that whole space, and especially in that NLP area, I think that's going to be an absolute game changer. In fact, I think it's going to be a game changer probably in far fewer than 10 years. I don't even know what's going to be in the next 7 after the next 3. So it'll be an interesting question to keep asking people.
Yeah, absolutely. Great answer. Chip, same question.
Well, I guess it's a bit self-serving, but I would tend to agree with John with respect to just the extension of what's happened with RPA and all the way out into the cognitive capabilities. It will do more to change work in the next 5 to 10 years than the last 50 to 100 years. I see a lot of the redundant, boring rote work that, frankly, people don't like to do being fully replaced by automation capabilities. I see a completely different career for our kids and our grandkids by virtue of what automation will accomplish. And the things that workers do 25 years from now will be just a tiny fraction of what we do. It'll be value added. It'll be real complex human interaction. And it'll be much more fulfilling and much more exciting, I think, for people to work 25 years from now than it has been, say, in the last 25 years.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think this whole world of work is going to be so interesting. It's going through such huge disruption. Automation is one of the major disruptors, but also so is the gig economy, the way we work, the way we'll use sourcing partners, what we'll use full-time employees for. I think all of that balance is going to change. Where we go to work, the physical office space is going to be, has been disrupted by COVID and is going to continue to be. So, yeah, hugely interesting area. My final question: is there somebody who's had an influence on your career to date from a technology leadership perspective? It could be a sort of a Bill Gates or an Elon Musk or someone who previous guests have answered, or it could be somebody who was a college professor or somebody said it was their mum. But is there somebody who's been a sort of technology hero, someone who's had a big influence on your career so far? And Chip, let me ask you that one first.
Well, I don't know that it's so much an influence on my career, although I think if I were starting a career now, it could very easily have altered my career. But I definitely have to pick Elon Musk. The guy is truly revolutionary in so many ways. He reminds me of Steve Jobs and of other true visionaries. I mean, here's a guy that's in so many different businesses, and he's revolutionizing cars. I mean, really, it's an application of battery technology, but to be able to create a car with 500 parts in it versus a conventional gas combustion engine car, which is 5,000 parts, and then to be able to create a range of 400 miles on an overnight charge in your garage, or in a lot faster period at the superchargers, and to do the other things that have happened with SpaceX and even the Boring Company, which I'm not sure is going to go off the ground, but what an amazing guy.
Yep, absolutely. No, what a brain that guy has. No, great answer. And John, same question for you.
Yeah, for me, actually, reflecting on this is really probably an amalgam of a couple of mentors that I had early in my career who, in their own way, asked me the question, what would you do if you were not afraid? And that, for me, has been the greatest influence and made all the difference.
What a great question. That's definitely something I'll take away with me. That's a great question to ask. So thank you very much. Great answer. And gentlemen, thank you ever so much for joining me today. It's been a really fascinating conversation. I think the whole world of automation enablement is very much of its time. We've talked about how it's challenging for organizations to scale, and the type of products and services that Neuralify and ISG combined can now provide are really, really exciting in the market. I think it's a fantastic fit, and I think the future looks very bright. So really appreciate you joining me today. Big thank you. Thanks very much.